Down there, life continues. The traffic is awful, stocks go on trading, and Star Trek is still showing.
Hello, grade 9 learners. Welcome back to our first live lessons for 2023, right? My name is Mr. Sianda Madala, and this lesson is proudly brought to you by the Gauteng Department of Education. Right, in today's lesson, it is term 1, and we're going to be exploring life and living. And specifically today, we'll be looking at cells as the basic unit of life, right? And looking more specifically at the cell structures. So stay tuned. Now, let's look at our lesson objectives. Now, remember, this is what we need to achieve by the end of the lesson. So, meaning by the end of the lesson, you should be able to explain that the cell is the basic unit of all living organisms, right? You should be able to tell the next person that a cell is the basic unit of all living organisms. Not only that, you should also be in a position where you are able to identify the following organelles in cells, right? The organelles are the cell membrane, the nucleus, the cytoplasm, and the mitochondria, right? That is one of the focuses of today. And also, you need to be able to identify the differences between plants and animal cells. That's all for today, and all this information is found under the CAPS document on page 56. Now, moving on. Let's look at what we have done before in the previous grades and probably the same grade that lays a foundation to today's topic, right? So in grade 4, we have done the topic of living things, right? So do you still remember your living things, right? We said that living things are able to carry out what? The 7 life processes, right? To mention some, which is breathing, movement, excretion, and so on, right? So now those are your living things that we have discussed in our grade 4. Right. We also have a lovely baseline activity. So I want you to take some time to write down this baseline activity, about 5 minutes of your time. But firstly, let's read through the questions together. Number 1 is saying, what are all animals, humans, bacteria, and plants made up of? Then number 2, which type of cell has a cell wall? Number 3, identify the biotic components in this picture, right? So we have a picture below here. We have to identify the biotic components from that picture. So take 5 minutes to write down this activity. Then after that, we'll meet for corrections. Welcome back, grade 9 learners. Now remember, we still care for you even this year, right? So if you want to send in those answers or any questions or comments related to this lesson, our WhatsApp number is 079 578 2908, right? So now let's go through the solutions. Now, number one is saying, what are all animals, humans, bacteria, and plants made up of? They are all made up of what? They are all made up of cells, right? Remember, cells are our basic unit of life, right? Or they are building blocks of every living organism, right? So now they are made up of cells. Number two, which type of cell has a cell wall? And that is obviously the plant cell, right? A plant cell only has what? A cell wall. Number three, identify the biotic components in this picture. So now let's go back to our previous grades, right? We talked about biotic and abiotic factors, right? We said that biotic, those are the living components of the ecosystem, right? And the abiotic, those are the non-living components of what? Of the ecosystem. So now the biotic components in this picture, for 6 marks, you needed only to list 6, right? Those are the bear there, right? As you can see, there's a bear. It is a living component, right? It is biotic. We also have what? We also have a fox. Not only a fox, we also have what? A rabbit. We also have what? Look there. We have a bird. We have some fish, right? And we also have a shark there, right? We also have a shark, right? And if we have mentioned those trees, give yourself a tick as well, right? So let's just take quick 2 minutes to copy down the corrections. Welcome back again, grade 9 learners. Just a reminder, right? Our WhatsApp number is 079 right? So now let's sign through together with this sheep, right? So now, let's look at our important terminology for this lesson, right? The first term that we have there is cell, right? Which is our topic for today, cells, right? The cell is the basic structural and functional unit of all living organisms. Secondly, we have what? Organelle, right? Organelle is a specialized structure within the cell and carries all the cell's functions, right? Or it carries out the cell's functions. So it's like there are little parts of what? A cell that carry out what? Functions for the cell. Also, we have microscopic. When we say something is microscopic, it means that it can only be seen under a microscope and cannot be seen with our own naked eyes. Now, we also have what? Nucleus. And the nucleus is an organelle which is found in both plant and animal cells, and it is responsible for controlling all the activities within the cell. So it is the control center of the cell. We also have cytoplasm. And the cytoplasm is a jelly-like fluid or jelly-like liquid in the cell where chemical reactions take place. We also have cell wall. The cell wall is an organelle that is found only in plant cells and gives the cell its rigid shape. We also have mitochondria. And the mitochondria is an organelle which is found also in both plants and animal cells, and it is responsible for the process of cellular respiration, right? The process of breaking down food or glucose to form what? Energy. Right. We also have vacuole. And a vacuole is an organelle also which is found in both plants and animal cells, and that one is responsible for what? For storage, right? So all of these we're going to talk more about in this lesson today. Right. The cell. We said that the cell is the basic and structural unit of all living organisms, right? So a cell looks something like this, right? It has many organelles inside it that carry out what? They carry out different functions for the cell. So as you can see, this is a number of cells, right? So one singular cell looks something like this. It has also its own what? Organelles which perform certain functions for the cell. For example, we have a nucleus here, and we've said that the nucleus is what? The control center of the cell. It controls all the activities of the cell. So let's talk more about these cells. We said that the cells are basic units of all living organisms, right? They are structural and functional units of these living organisms, right? So now, all animals, humans, and plants are made up of these small structures, which are called what? Cells. They are our basic units, or they are our building blocks, right? So all animals, humans, which are us, and the plants, they are made up of these cells that we're talking about today, right? But remember one thing, these cells, they can never be seen by our own naked eyes, right? So what happens here? We can only see cells using a piece of equipment called what? The microscope. So scientists use microscopes to learn more about cells that are found where in living organisms such as all animals, humans, and plants, right? So to learn more about these cells, scientists use what? A piece of equipment called the microscope. So the microscope looks something like this as well. The microscope as well has what? Different parts that perform functions for the microscope for us to be able to view the specimen, and in this case what? The cell that we're talking about, right? For instance, it has what? An eyepiece, it has objective lenses, it has a stage, it has a mirror, it has an arm, it has adjustable knobs, right? The coarse knob and the fine adjustment knob, right? So for us to be able to view these cells and be able to make sense out of them. Are we together? So remember one thing, these cells, they can never be seen with our own naked eyes, but can be only viewed by means of a microscope, right? But these cells are our building blocks, right? They are our basic structural and functional units of all living organisms. Now, as I've said, right, that humans are made up of cells, right? But they are made up of cells of different types. Why am I saying so? Now, look, if you're looking at me now, and if you look at the next person, right? They have what? Skin, they have hair, they have nails, and they have bones, right? And they have nerves and so on. All these parts or these organs are different from each other, right? But they are all made up of cells. Cells that are not the same to each other, right? So now, for example, nerve cells are different from other body cells, right? So they're able to carry out different functions for the human being as a whole. So we say that humans are made up of many cells that are of different types. Are we together? But now, all animal cells, including human cells that we're talking about here, they have the same basic structure, right? This is the structure that I'm talking about here. They have the same basic structure. So now, we've taken what? Animal cell as an example, right? Because now we're talking about animals, right? We're talking about humans and other animals, right? So they have this same basic structure. That structure has the following organelles, right? It has a cell membrane. Not only a cell membrane, it has a mitochondria, right? Which is the one that is labeled there. It has a mitochondria. They all have a nucleus. They all have what? A vacuole. They have what? Golgi bodies, ribosomes, and also what? Cytoplasm, right? Now, I want you to note one thing here. In this cell, all the different organelles, they perform what? Different functions for this particular cell so that the cell is able to function properly, right? For example, before we get deeply into that, for example, the ribosomes, right? Ribosomes are round structures in the cell that manufacture proteins for the cell. Are we together? The nucleus controls all the activities of the cell, and which is what we're going to talk about in depth in the coming slides, right? So now, all animal cells, including human cells, they are made up of this basic structure containing what? A cell membrane, a mitochondria, nucleus, vacuole, Golgi bodies, ribosomes, and cytoplasm, right? That is the basic structure of all the cells across animals and humans. Are we together? So now, we said that the cell is the structural and functional unit of living organisms. I like this part here, right? Structural and functional. So meaning what? They provide structure and also they enable the living organism to carry out its functions. Are we together? It is the structural and functional unit of all living organisms. I'm right here in front of you now talking too much because of what? My cells have energy, my cells enable me to talk, and they provide structure for me as well, right? So they are our basic units and as well as structural and functional units of all living organisms. Right. So we said that all cells have a cell membrane, a nucleus, cytoplasm, many mitochondria, and ribosomes, right? That is the basic structure of all cells, right? So meaning each and every cell needs to have these structures or these organelles to function properly, right? And each one of these structures, they look different because they all have different jobs to do for the cell. Like I've mentioned in the previous slide, right? To say that the ribosomes, they manufacture what? Proteins for the cell. The mitochondria is the energy provider for the cell. The nucleus controls all the activities of the cell, right? And we're going to talk more about them. Now we said that all these cells, they have a same basic structure, right? So they have also what? Similar organelles, right? The organelles include having a cell membrane, right? Each and every cell, whether it's plant or animal, it needs to have a cell membrane, right? And not only that, they need to have a cytoplasm as well. Also, they need to have a nucleus as the control center of the cell. And also they need to have what? A mitochondria, right? So now here we have two cells. We have an animal cell and a plant cell. Now, just to remind you, remember plants are living organisms, right? That's why you keep on emphasizing the issue of plant cell and animal cell, right? So now we have animal cell and plant cell here, right? They are both cells, right? So now if you look carefully here, both these cells, they have what? A cytoplasm. The animal cell has a cytoplasm, and as well as the plant cell has what? Has a cytoplasm. Also, these cells, they both have a nucleus, a control center, right? They have a nucleus. The animal cell has a nucleus, and as well as the plant cell has its own nucleus, right? Now look carefully again. The animal cell has a cell membrane, right? Has a cell membrane. And as well as the plant cell has what? A cell membrane also, right? So now, they also have what? A mitochondria, whereas we have what? Animal cell having its own mitochondria and the plant cell having its own mitochondria. Now, the green ones here, right? That are labeled green, those are specialized organelles that are found in plant cells only, like the cell wall, which has a cellulose, a permanent vacuole or a large vacuole, and as well as a chloroplast, right? So 1, 2, 3, those are shaded green. I want us to focus on them when we are talking about what? Differences between plant and animal cells. So now, remember this part here that they all have this basic structure or the same organelles, which is the cytoplasm, the nucleus, the cell membrane, and the mitochondrion across each and every cell, whether it's a plant or animal cell, right? So now, let's talk more about these organelles one by one, right? Now, the cell membrane, which is the basic structure or the basic organelle that a cell should have, right? A cell membrane, that one is the outer skin or the outer boundary of cells, right? Of a cell. And a cell membrane serves a purpose of what? Of enclosing all the cell contents. It encloses everything that is inside a cell, right? It encloses all the cell contents, meaning your cytoplasm, your ribosomes, your mitochondria are all bounded by what? By a cell membrane. Are we together? And that cell membrane, it is selectively permeable. What do we mean when we say something is selectively permeable? It means that it controls which substances enter or leave the cell. Are we together? It controls substances that are allowed to enter or leave the cell. So therefore we say that it is selectively permeable. Are we together? Now, here is two cells here, right? We have two cells here again, animal cell and a plant cell. So I want us now to identify what? The cell membrane in both these cells, right? So now, which one is our animal cell? This one, right? This is the animal cell. So here we find what? We find our cell membrane or our selectively permeable what? Cell membrane. So now, when looking at the plant cell, a plant cell has a double membrane, right? But now, inside here, we find what? Our cell membrane that we are looking for, right? So a plant cell also has a cell membrane that is selectively permeable, allowing certain substances to pass through and others not to pass through, right? So remember this cell membrane, it is the outer skin or boundary of the cell which encloses all the cell contents, and it is selectively permeable. Now moving on to the next organelle, we have the cytoplasm, right? The cytoplasm is also found in both plant and animal cells, right? So the cytoplasm is where all the organelles are found. So meaning what? It accommodates all the other organelles, or it houses what? All the other organelles, right? This is where all the other organelles are found. So it is a jelly-like medium, right? It is a jelly-like fluid. That is our cytoplasm. And it comprises of many dissolved nutrients. Not only that, right? As it holds organelles in place, it also does what? It is a site for all chemical reactions that take place inside a cell, right? So all chemical reactions, they take place inside what? The cytoplasm. Now, looking at our cell here, right? This whole blue structure here, or this whole blue part, is our cytoplasm. Are we together? That is our cytoplasm, right? It houses what? All the other organelles. So if you look at the blue part here, this is where you find all the other organelles, such as the nucleus, the mitochondria, ribosomes, and so on, right? So now it houses what? All the other organelles, and as well as this is where chemical reactions take place inside a cell. Now, we also have a nucleus, right, across all cells. And this nucleus, we say that it is the control center of the cell, and it contains DNA, right? It contains DNA, which is an important part where of what? Of our nature, right? DNA. So it is a round organelle, and its position differs between animal and plant cell. So this particular nucleus, it is also enclosed by a selectively permeable what? Membrane, which we call a nuclear membrane. So inside a cell, there's also a membrane enclosing what? The nucleus, which contains DNA, right? And that membrane, the nuclear membrane, is also selectively permeable, meaning it allows certain substances to move out or inside what? The nucleus. Now, we said that it contains DNA, and to unpack DNA, DNA is known as deoxyribonucleic acid, right? And what is the DNA for? The DNA talks about what? Our genetic material. It carries our genetic material. All our inherited characteristics from our grandfathers, from our forefathers, and so on, right? Like our skin colors, eye color, height, hair, and so on, right? This is because of what? Of the DNA that is inside a cell or inside a nucleus of a cell, right? Our genetic material or our inherited characteristics. And lastly, as we have said, we said that the nucleus controls all the activities of the cell. Right. We also have the mitochondria, right? As you can see, the mitochondria has a nice nickname, right? It has what? Energy powerhouse as a nickname, right? So it is the powerhouse of the cell. Why do we say it is the powerhouse of the cell? This is because it provides energy for the cell, right? So now, mitochondria is for many mitochondrions, right? So it's singular. When you have one mitochondrion, it's called what? Mitochondrion, right? But when there are many, it is mitochondria. So it is also found within the cytoplasm, and it is rod-shaped, and it is surrounded by a membrane as well, right? And as I've said, that it is responsible for providing the cell with energy. So it is responsible for the process of cellular respiration, right? When we are breaking down nutrients to bring about what? Energy, right? So the mitochondria is responsible for this process of cellular respiration. So now, looking at this structure here, right, I want us to extract what? A mitochondria and see how it looks like, right? So from this structure, where do we find our mitochondria? Right here, right? This is our mitochondria, right? That is our mitochondrium. And it looks like this when it is zoomed in, right? So this particular organelle, this is the one that is responsible for providing the cell with energy. It is surrounded by a membrane, and it is responsible for cellular respiration, for providing what? Energy. Now, we have a lovely activity, right? I've been talking too much today, so now it's your time to shine, right? It's your time to write down the activity and test if you understand so far, right? So the activity is simple. It's just saying sketch and label the main parts of an animal cell. So because you need to draw and label, I'm going to give you 5 minutes in total to be able to complete this activity. So let's meet again after 5 minutes. Welcome back, grade 9 learners. Now let's look at our solutions, right? The question was saying, sketch and label the main parts of an animal cell, right? I hope you enjoyed this activity. Now let's look at these solutions. Now this is what a structure of an animal cell, right? So it has what? A cell membrane, right? You tick. Also it has what? As the main parts, it has the nucleus. It also has what? The mitochondrion. Not only that, it has the cytoplasm, right? It also has the cytoplasm. So let's just take a quick 2 minutes to copy down the corrections. Remember, before that, our WhatsApp number is still 079 578 2908. Let's meet again after 2 minutes. Welcome back, grade 9s. Now let's move on together. Right. Differences between plants and animal cells. Right. We have seen now that cells have the same basic structure containing a nucleus, a mitochondrion, a cytoplasm, a cell membrane. Right. So now, well, let's look at the differences between the two plants and animal cells. Right. So now, firstly, let me remind you, right? Plants and animals, they appear different from each other because their cells are different from each other as well, right? So when you look at plants, you see something like this, right? These are our plants, right? You see almost everything is green, right? Or most of the plants are green, right? Also now, when you look at animals, animals are more different from plants as well. Animals can move, animals have fur, they have skin, they have eyes, they are breathing, and so on and so on, right? This is because of what? The cells of animals are different from the cells of plants altogether, right? This is what sets the differences between the two organisms. Are we together? Now let's quickly look at the differences now between the cells. Right. The first difference then is that plant cells have a cell wall, right? Plant cells have a cell wall, and that cell wall surrounds the cell on the outside of the cell membrane. So if you remember our previous slides, I said that the plant cell has a double membrane, right? That is what? The cell membrane, and now the what? The cell wall. So plant cells have a cell wall which surrounds what? The cell membrane of the cell. So that cell membrane, it is made up of cellulose, right? It is made up of cellulose, which is a rigid material, and it's able to give what? The plant support, structure, and strength, right? So now, the cell wall, as I've said now, it provides the cell with support and protection. So now, animal cells, they do not have a cell wall because the organisms are usually supported and protected by their skeleton. So now, looking at this particular cell here, this is a plant cell, right? So when you look at this, it has all the other basic parts or the basic organelles such as the vacuoles, what you call this? Mitochondria, cell membrane, cytoplasm, and nucleus. But now, here we find what? Our cell wall, right? And if you look carefully, the cell wall is just around the cell membrane. And this particular cell wall, we say that it's made up of what? It's made up of cellulose. What is cellulose for? For providing what? Support and protection for the plant. That is what is special about what? The plant cell. That's why you see trees standing upright to what? To the sky, right? They are standing upright and they have what? Strength against winds. This is because of their cells having cellulose and the cell wall. Right. Now, when looking at an animal cell has only what? A cell membrane and does not have what? A cell wall. Right. Now, here is another difference. Let's just take a minute quickly just to fix this technical error.
Attitude of gratitude. What does that mean? An attitude of gratitude is the quality of being thankful. It's the quality of giving thanks. Ubonga, ulebuha. It's to be grateful. You and I have so much to be grateful for. You and I have parents who make sacrifices day and night for us to be at school. You and I have people who believe in us when we don't believe in ourselves, who love us when we don't love ourselves, who invest in us day and time again. Whether it's a teacher, it's a principal, it's a driver, it's a guardian, we have so much to be grateful for. And so I challenge you, young person, be thankful. Ubonge, lebuha, be grateful each and every single day of your life. Strive to display an attitude of gratitude.
Sorry for that technical error. Right, we were saying that plant cells have what? A cell wall, and animal cells do not have what? A cell wall. So let's quickly look at another difference between plant and animal cells, right? So another difference is that plant cells have what? Chloroplasts, right? They have a specialized or special organelle called the chloroplast, right? Whereas animal cells do not have a chloroplast, right? So now this chloroplast, it contains a green pigment which is called the chlorophyll, right? That special chlorophyll now is the one that traps sunlight for the plants to be able to photosynthesize, right? So chlorophyll is a green pigment that absorbs light energy from the sun and converts it into energy-rich sugars, right? So it meaning what? The chloroplast is the site for photosynthesis, right? So remember, animals do not photosynthesize, right? They cannot be able to make their own food. So plants can be able to make their own food by means of a chloroplast and that special pigment in that chloroplast called the chlorophyll. Are we together? So now, also, right, we said that chlorophyll is enabling what? Photosynthesis, right? It enables photosynthesis for the plants to be able to make their own food. And animals are unable to make their own food by the process of what? Photosynthesis, because they do not have chloroplasts, right? So looking at this structure here again, this is where we find our chloroplasts, right? All these are our chloroplasts, and they are found specifically in plant cells and not in animal cells. Are we together? So now, moving on. Now, I have two pictures here, right? They are there for a reason, right? This is an animal cell and a plant cell, right? We're still looking at the differences between the two, right? So now, we've mentioned that the plant cell has what? Has a cell wall, whereas an animal cell does not have a cell wall. We have mentioned that also the plant cell has a chloroplast, whereas the animal cell does not have what? The chloroplast. So now, this picture is there for you to be able to identify other what? Other differences. So now, let's help each other find the differences, right? The first difference that I see there, the animal cell has an irregular shape, right? It has what? An irregular shape, right? Whereas the plant cell has a regular shape, right? It has a regular shape. So now when looking at the two, right, you can almost say that the plant cell has a rectangular shape or whatsoever, right? But because it has what? A regular shape. Now the animal cell, the shape is irregular, right? It is not a usual shape. What else can we identify there, right? Now looking at the organelles, chloroplast, nucleus, mitochondrion, cell wall, cell membrane, vacuole, right? Looking at this side, do we see any vacuole? No, right? This is why. The plant cells have a large vacuole, right? It has a large what? Vacuole. Whereas the animal cells, they have small or no vacuole, right? That is another difference between what? Between the two cells, plant cells and animal cells. So regular shape and irregular shape, whereas the plant cell has what? A large vacuole, and the animal cell has what? Small or no vacuole, right? That is one of, that is what? Those are other differences between plants and animal cells. So now, moving on, we also have activity 2, which I'd like you to write down quickly. And for this one, because you still have to draw a table again, I'm going to give you 5 minutes. Before we get there, let's read through the question. So it says table to show the functions of the different structures found in animal cells. Provide the appropriate terms for the given descriptions and functions, right? So now, after 5 minutes, we'll be marking this activity. Welcome back, grade 9s. Now let's mark the activity together, right? So you simply needed to provide the appropriate terms for the given descriptions and functions on column B, right? So now, the thin layer that surrounds the cell, that is what? Let's look at the solutions. The thin layer that surrounds the cell, that is the cell membrane, right? Secondly, shaped like a sausage and creates energy for the cell. That is our mitochondria. Found towards the center of the cell and controls all the activities of the cell. That is the nucleus. The jelly-like liquid in cells where reactions take place. That is the cytoplasm. Many round structures responsible for creating proteins. That is the ribosomes, right? So let's just take a quick minute to copy down the corrections. Welcome back, grade 9s. Now, we would have given you a chance for WhatsApp slide, but ever since, there's no questions, there's no comments, or anything about this lesson in our WhatsApp page. So now let's quickly summarize what we have learned for today. So today we talked about what? The cell as the structural and functional unit of all living organisms. Saying that cells provide structure and also they enable functions for all living organisms, right? And we said that the cells all have the basic organelles or they have structures like the cell membrane, the cytoplasm, the nucleus, and the mitochondria, right? So to give you an example as an animal cell, this is our cell membrane here, right? This is our cytoplasm, right? This is our cytoplasm, and this is our nucleus, and these are our mitochondria, right? So now, moving on as well, we also talked about what? The cell being a functional unit of all living organisms. So meaning all animals, humans, and plants are made up of these cells, right? Because all those, they are our living organisms, right? They are made up of these tiny structures called cells, right? So the cells also, they cannot be seen with our own naked eyes, but can only be seen by means of a microscope, right? And we said that all cells, they have a cell membrane, a nucleus, a cytoplasm, many mitochondria, and ribosomes. So we said that the parts of these cells or these organelles that I've just mentioned, they all look different from each other because they have different functions or jobs to do for the cell. So we also talked about the differences between plants and animal cells, right? So we said that plant cells have a regular shape, whereas animal cells have an irregular shape. Plant cells have a large vacuole, whereas animal cells have small or no vacuole. Plant cells have a chloroplast. Animal cells have no chloroplast because they do not photosynthesize. And also we talked about what? Plant cells having a cell wall and animal cells not having what? Any cell wall. So now, let's just take a minute quickly to copy down this homework activity. It says tabulate differences between plants and animal cells. We'll meet again after a minute. Welcome back, grade 9s. Now let's wrap up our lesson, right? So now, in the next lesson, we'll be talking about the systems in the human body, right? Just to mention a few: circulatory system, the nervous system, respiratory, digestive, and the skeletal system, right? Those are part of our systems in the human body. So from me to you now, thank you and goodbye.